Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Wilson, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you, the Morning Majority. 105.9 FM, AM 630. WMAL.
It's Neiman and Wilson. Karen Henready is in for Mary Catherine today. Joe DiGenova is with us, our legal expert. Good to talk to you again, Joe.
Nice to be back.
There's a lot to talk about. We'll get into Penn State in just a little bit, but I did want to start off with the Supreme Court announcing yesterday that it will review President Obama's health care law. Will it be is the case solely about the individual mandate, and if there is a verdict one way or the other, unconstitutional or constitutional, or can there be some type of nuanced verdict when it comes to this case?
Well, it is about the mandate, because the mandate is the one thing, along with all the other mandates that are included in the bill. 26 of the states do not want any part of this, which is why this has become so important. This is a federalism crisis in litigation. But the mandate is the big banana. And there's no way to tell what the court's going to do. Anthony Kennedy is the swing vote, and he is an extremely unpredictable vote. This is going to be an historic vote about the function of government, the power of Congress under the Commerce Clause, and he will paint himself a place in history. And so that is always a dangerous place to be for people who want a particular kind of result.
Right.
And he is unpredictable, and so you just don't know what's going to happen.
All right, let me ask you about Elena Kagan. Now,
Yes.
First of all, for those who may not know, explain what a Solicitor General is.
Well, the Solicitor General is the one and only person who represents the United States in the Supreme Court.
All right.
It is a very powerful position. It is a highly respected position. They are considered to be almost a member of the court with special responsibilities beyond those of ordinary lawyers, to be more than truthful, more than an advocate. Their job is to inform the court, to make it know what all of the law is that could be relevant. That's why, by the way, when they missed the case at the beginning of Kagan's term in citing a very important case, they were mortified in the Solicitor General's office, and it was a black mark on the beginning of her tenure.
All right, so Elena Kagan...
it's a big deal to be the Solicitor General, right. And then she became a justice on the Supreme Court.
And therein lies the question that I have for you. She's the Solicitor General before she is nominated to the Supreme Court, and on the day that the Obamacare vote goes down, she sends a letter to noted jurist, liberal professor Lawrence Tribe, says, "I hear they have the votes, Larry!" ! Simply amazing. And then later that day, she gets an email. It's a chain email that comes through her deputy, who's now the Solicitor General, saying, "Hey, look, we got to get together and we got to start talking about how we're going to defend this Obamacare because there will be legal challenges to the law. There seems to be no doubt about it." Now, there is no indication she actually did attend that meeting, but it seems likely that the Solicitor General would be involved in such discussions, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And in fact, there are other emails which make it even more likely that she may have participated. There is a set of emails that are not in the latest stories where she sends Katyal an email saying, please, she says nothing else except, "Please send me your cell phone number." Now, what that meant was she wanted to stop putting things in email.
Exactly.
And there is no doubt that she did participate somewhat in health care discussions, and no doubt about the bill.
All right, so should she then recuse herself from considering this matter now before the Supreme Court?
There are two answers. The answer is yes, and she won't. She should recuse herself. She's not going to, because there's nothing anybody can do to force her to recuse herself. The justices decide on their own. However, if the Republicans take over the Senate in 2012, I can guarantee you there are going to be hearings and subpoenas are going to fly, especially if the court upholds the law and she is in the majority. If the court strikes down the law, her presence will not be an issue. But if they uphold the law, and we're headed in after the election, if the Republicans take over the Senate, there is going to be a war over her having voted.
And so you believe that the fact that she wanted the cell phone number was that she wanted to have a conversation, she wanted it to be off the record, and she didn't want to have a paper trail of what that conversation was going to be.
And see, even the people who file Freedom of Information lawsuits, you can't get depositions. Those are just paper lawsuits, so you can't depose her, and you can't depose anybody in the Justice Department. It's only a rare case when you can get people under oath. So what's been happening is the Justice Department has been slow-walking the production of internal documents about her. For example, the one that was released recently with where she sends the email to Larry Tribe, that thing could have been produced 2 years ago. It was only produced within the last few days. They are slow-walking production because they are worried about recusal as a big-time issue.
We just assumed that the 4 conservative, quotes, justices and the 4 liberal justices are going to go the way.
I think for the most part, I mean, you could sometimes John Roberts can be quirky and be interesting, but I think for the most part, this mandate is either going to hit you in the gut where you live philosophically, or it isn't.
All right. On the Penn State matter, I could talk to you about this forever, but
all over Europe, by the way. The biggest story in Europe is, as they pronounce it, Joe Paterno.
Right. I guess my question to you is: do you think the FBI should get involved in here? Do you think the attorney generals and the people who are in charge of the legal system in Pennsylvania can handle this? Because it seems to me that maybe some people within the system itself may be compromised. I mean, you have the governor who was the attorney general in 2005, who is now the governor and is also on the board of trustees. I mean, it's just so intertwined. It's just amazing.
I think the Penn State case is a disaster for law enforcement. It's clear that, and I'm going to say this categorically, that local investigation a couple of years, when the original allegations came out, was clearly a cover-up to protect Penn State.
I thought so.
This is all about protecting Penn State. Joe Paterno, I love the guy. He's wonderful, but he comes from a generation where you never believe the kids when they say they were sexually assaulted. These are the same people who never believed that priests could be pedophiles, who if a child went and told their parents that they had been assaulted, the parents would slap the kid.
Yeah.
That's how this happened. And I'm going to tell you something. If the Bureau isn't in this right now, it is a shame. This is pedophilia gone wild. This is a disgrace. The fact that McQuarrie has not been fired, although he is now a witness, so probably there are laws protecting him as a whistleblower, although he did not whistleblow. He walked away from this. Paterno walked away from this. Every one of these people at Penn State walked away from this. This is a disgrace. By the way, this guy Amendola, who is the lawyer for Sandusky, he's as much of a pod person as Sandusky is. Have you watched this guy on television? I mean, this guy looks like he's got a problem.
I know. Well, the New York Post reported that apparently he may have had sex and fathered a child of a 16-year-old back in the 90s, and then later married her.
I think the Pennsylvania. Now remember, this is the same state. This is a very bad state legally. Pennsylvania has a rotten reputation for legal affairs and law enforcement. It has a horrific reputation. This should be taken over by the United States Attorney in Philadelphia or the Western District of Pennsylvania. The Attorney General for the state clearly has a conflict of interest. The governor has a conflict. And there clearly are violations of the Mann Act, which are possible under the fact pattern as we know it. And clearly, there just isn't any doubt that something happened here. And just listening to Sandusky with Bob Costas, that was so sad and just mortifying.
Right.
It made you furious, just furious to listen to him.
All right, Joe. I'm sure we'll talk about this many more times down the road. Thanks very much, as always.
Okay, guys.
Appreciate